I think that taking action on the premise that somehow it's practical is not a wise idea. That one should get up and try and be as honest as they can, and to keep their distance from the sources of power. I mean, I definitely come out of the Julian Benda, my kingdom is not of this world idea that people who consider themselves writers or voices or intellectuals should not come close to any system of power. That immediately becomes corrupting, and that, of course, has poisoned academia, where within political science and international relations department, there's a kind of constant turnover between government and academia and government and academia. Well, you lose your ability to speak truth. And I think also because I come out of a theological background or a religious background, although I don't consider myself particularly religious in any way, there's certainly no Christian denomination that would consider me a Christian, even my own church, the Presbyterians. I think we do have moral imperatives. As my friend Father Daniel Berrigan says, who I just had lunch with a couple weeks ago in New York, we are called to do good, or at least the good to the extent that we can see it and understand it. But after that, it's not our job to figure out where that good goes. We trust or have faith or hope that it goes somewhere, but we can't know. And I think that gives a kind of, Berrigan's almost 90 years old. I think he was arrested just last year again. And I think that when you have that, when you give up that idea that you can have a practical effect and you remain fast to a moral imperative no matter what the cost, then that your definition of your worth as an individual, and perhaps even in religious terms your spirituality, is defined by your commitment to justice, then you can sort of lay it down when you finish. Because, look, the chances are that everything that I believe in and everything that I fight for by the end of my life will be worse. And yet, does that invalidate everything that I've done? I don't think so. I think that the failure of the liberal class is that it forgot that those moral imperatives are important, that the true correctives to society were social movements that never achieved formal political power. The Liberty Party that fought slavery, the suffragists for women's rights, the labor movement, the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement. The most powerful political figure in 1968 in America was Martin Luther King. Because when he went to Birmingham, 50,000 people went with him. And that the collusion or collaboration of liberal institutions and liberal classes with the power elite, which they think mistakenly was a way to influence power, saw them disempowered. And that holding fast to those moral imperatives, even if everything around you appears to deteriorate, is finally sustained by faith. Faith that it's worthwhile, faith that it's worth doing, faith that it's meaningful, even if you can't see any tangible results. I speak a little bit from personal experience because, having been in war zones, I have seen acts of resistance that within the wider scheme of the war are rendered futile. And yet they resonate with a palpable power when everything is stripped down in war that is undeniable. I write in War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning about a Muslim farmer, Fazl Fadic, who lived in Gorazda, which was one of the safe areas in Bosnia during the war. And I heard about Fazl Fadic from a Serbian couple, Rosa and Drago Sorak, who had, like many ethnic Serbs, remained within the Muslim enclave at the inception of the war, not joined Radovan Karadic's nationalist forces. And the story they told me was that while living in Gorazda, they had two sons, Zoran, who lived with them with his wife, and another son who went and fought for the Bosnian Serbs. He was eventually killed in a car crash. Finally, as things got worse and worse within the enclave, constant shelling, food shortages, the Muslim police came and took Zoran away as a Serb, and he was disappeared, executed. They never found his body. Zoran's wife was pregnant, and she gave birth to an infant girl, but she couldn't breastfeed the child. And so the infant began to die. The family was feeding the infant weak cups of tea to try and keep it alive. On the 10th day, Fazil Fadic, an illiterate Muslim farmer, knocked on the door and handed at dawn the Sorax a liter of milk. He had 3 great brown and white milk cows that he could only milk at night because of the sniper fire. And he came back the next morning, and the morning after that, and the morning after that, and the morning after that, until everyone on that street and everyone in that apartment building knew that this Muslim farmer was giving milk, which of course was worth tremendous amounts of money, to keep a Serb infant alive. And they began to spit on him and insult him and tell him to let the Chetnik children die and give the milk to the Muslim children. And through it all, he kept coming and coming and coming until the Sorax were able to leave Gorazda. I heard that story from the Sorax, who said, "We hate the Muslims. We hate them for killing our son, Zoran. And yet, it is our duty to tell you that not all Muslims are bad." I went and found Fadic. His 3 cows had been slaughtered for the meat. His apartment building had been turned into rubble from the shelling. He was sleeping on a concrete floor on pieces of newspaper with other men. They were gathering worm-eaten apples from an orchard and sitting out on the sidewalk trying to sell them. And when I found him and told him that I had seen the Sorax, the first thing he said to me, "And the baby, how is she?" What in the grand scheme of war is that action? For me, it throws out an ocean of hope that ripples outward across a culture that's gone insane. He provided through his courage another narrative, another way to be. That little girl, who may never meet him, will grow up and know that she's alive as a Serb because of a Muslim farmer. In the scheme of the war, it's nothing, yet in the scheme of life, it's everything. And I think when you talk about acts of resistance, especially in moments of extreme deprivation and suffering and violence, actions like that become, as Auden said, the ironic points of light that flash out. Defenseless under the night, our world in stupor lies, yet dotted everywhere, ironic points of light flash out, wherever the just exchange their messages. May I, composed like them of eros and of dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame. Thank you.